So who was it? It was the one who showed mercy. I think I talked before about the Hebrew word chesed, who showed loyalty, who showed mercy, who showed kindness. That was the one who acted as a neighbor, who expanded their view of who their neighbors are. Mercy, or chesed, or loyalty, covenant loyalty, or kindness, those are values that go with neighborliness. Those are values that go with welcome. Those are values that go with hospitality. And it's easy to say that you love someone. One of the things that Jesus was trying to demonstrate is that love comes at a cost. Love comes with some action. Eternal life, then, which was the original question, right? Where there's layer upon layer upon layer here. Eternal life, when you come back to it, is about the actions that you take, not just with respect to God. And I think that's something that we have done, pretty well sometimes. We Christians and we Christian ministers, we've talked a lot about how we interact with God. That's true, but it's not just that. It's how we treat our neighbor. It's how we treat the ones around us. That also is a part of this eternal life business. And that's a little scary because, you love God or you believe in God. That's distant, right? Many of us, we have this idea God's here all the time. He's there. He's watching what we do. He's interacting with us. He's calling to us. But that can be a little bit more difficult, I guess, to get our minds around that it's some kind of dynamic relationship. Yet, with the people that we can actually see. I mean, one of the New Testament writers says, if you say you love God, who you haven't seen, but hate your neighbor who you have seen, you're lying. And that is hard to deal with sometimes. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in one of the subsequent lectures, but it's interesting to me that this comes up close and personal, it seems to me, for those in the healthcare business. Because your task, at least as I understand it, is to care for the people in front of you. It's hard, I think, sometimes. It would be for me. It would be hard for me not to judge sometimes who is deserving of my care. But because sometimes people do things to themselves, and it could be as benign, if that's the right word, as overeating. It can be as vicious, I guess, or self-destructive. Maybe that's a better word. It could be as self-destructive as intravenous drug use. When someone presents in an emergency room, for example, the task is, as I understand it, it is not judging. That's not what you're there for. You're there to provide care. And that is hospitality, that's neighborliness, and it's in that attitude. That's where I would struggle, and where I have such incredible respect for those in healthcare who are able to just exude compassion. Okay, whatever their feelings might be on the back end or whatever, but there's a way in which you dig in and you do what needs to be done. We're not told anything about this guy that goes down from Jerusalem to Jericho. He may have been a real pain to deal with. He may have been awful. He may have been running away from his wife. We're not given any of that backstory. We don't know any of that. We don't know a thing about him other than he was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And the Samaritan wasn't concerned about how he got there. He was just concerned that he was there. and he just dealt with the matter at hand. He was neighborly. And how we are as neighbors impacts the spiritual dimension of our lives, it would seem. Jesus is tying those two things together in a very story-like way to make the point. He takes longer by telling the story than he would have if he had just said to the lawyer, everybody is your neighbor. But by putting it this way, by constructing this story this way, he makes the point far more indelibly. There is no way that someone can miss this point after asking Jesus that question. More powerful than just saying, everybody's your neighbor. But I'll say it that way. Everybody's our neighbor.